Hello and welcome back to Final Sector. We are debriefing just the Austrian Grand Prix this weekend. Apologies for missing out on the Spanish Grand Prix and the Austrian preview. We had a very sick host in, guess who? It was Kyle again.
You're not rewatching an episode from 5 or 6 times back.
No, it's just happened again.
How this year is going, I guess.
So, yeah, let's be honest, the Spanish Grand Prix was pretty mid anyway. Let's talk about the fun one, which was Austria. I'm just going to jump straight into it because this is all anyone really cares about.
Yes.
It's the Max and Lando story.
Yeah.
Besties no longer, obviously.
Yeah.
It was, before we go into the actual, the fight at the end.
Carnage.
Exactly.
Yes.
This was one of those races, it was actually, the first half of it was not very good, was it? Like, it was real sleepy.
Not for the lead. I mean, there was quite a bit going on. Testament to how close the top four teams were. But for the lead, not necessarily.
Yeah, yeah. But, yeah, I think a couple of things happened to really spice it up. All good. A couple of things happened to really spice it up. And it mainly was because of some errors from Red Bull and Max in particular. That final pit stop that Max came in, they had a problem with the rear left. And then to add insult to injury, Norris, who had pitted just behind him, I think 7 seconds behind, so he obviously had a pretty comfortable lead. Norris right behind him, because their pit stop was so long, he had to wait for Norris to come through before he could leave the pits. So when they dropped the car, he had to wait a couple of seconds before Norris went through.
Right.
That was some compounding issue. Even still, obviously, he sort of halved the gap to about, 3.5 seconds as they came out.
Yes, and you still thought, well, Max has kind of dominated this weekend, so even then, he's probably going to run away with it.
And then he locks up into T4, and he's on the radio saying,
Yes.
these tyres are crap. And all of a sudden, Norris is within a second of him. And then we get to, obviously, if everyone's seen it. I checked the F1 Austria race highlights, and it is currently #1 trending for gaming for some reason.
Yeah.
I thought that was odd, but it's like,
I saw also that ticket sales for Silverstone have boomed apparently in this, so
yeah.
I think that's handy.
We haven't had any big incidents with championship rivals in recent years at Silverstone.
Not for a little bit.
Not
no.
since 2021, no.
And there was a fair bit of lead up to this. Like, we're not really talking about Spain, but we came away from Spain where Norris was actually really unhappy. Like, he had a P2. And you think it's not that long ago when McLaren would celebrate a P2 like, any other race win almost.
Yeah.
But he came away, he was like, nope, if we did things right, we should have won. And the team were like, yep, we should have won. So already out of that race, they were not satisfied with their performance, despite it being a weekend where we thought Red Bull would be, very strong going into it, given it's a more traditional racetrack. So that gave us some hope. We then had the sprint weekend here. We saw that actually McLarens were very feisty, and you could argue again that actually Max had to push really hard and Norris kind of lost it again. I wouldn't say he threw it away. It was a titanic battle, but Max did get past him, and you could feel that again to say, well, actually here, he probably did lose another win here or a good shot at it.
Yep.
And it also showed that early on, either on fresh tyres or a new stint, that McLaren is just fast. Like, they have so much more confidence under braking, and they can just treat the tires so much more rough early on than any other team, and it doesn't necessarily hurt them later. And even in the sprint where Max moved away a bit, you'd argue that's more because their car sped up, because then Oscar and Lando were kind of even ahead of everyone else behind them that wasn't even close there.
Yeah.
So I think it was a combination of Lando having all of this leading up to it, seeing that he was closer to Max being under pressure because he knew that Lando could close up, and then making that lock up, and Lando just nailing every corner, every sector, and suddenly he's behind him. And then we just have this 4 laps in a row, this battle, which gets more climactic, until, of course, they hit, as if they were going to do anything else. Here at Austria, it always happens. I mean, how many examples of people brought up? It seems every year they go, oh, well, look when this happened, and look when this happened. It's always this corner, and it's always Max for the lead. And it's like, damn, you forget that here, despite how small a circuit it is, despite how simple a circuit it is, it's actually insane for how good the racing is here, especially into that corner. It's just perfect.
Yeah,
and
10,
we
10
again
corner track, the shortest in terms of time on the calendar.
yes, and even 10. There's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
4 or
10,
5 braking zones if you like, and
Yeah.
3 of them are good passing opportunities.
Yeah.
And this is I mean monumental for the season. I mean, wow, who could have guessed 4 or 5 races ago this is where we would be?
Yeah.
And it's not that much until we've got the next weekend, and you can imagine everyone's going to be talking to it up until then as well.
I mean,
so...
very briefly touching on the next weekend, this is where last year McLaren were also very strong. They were strong in Austria, but
they were very strong. This was really their upturn for last year.
Exactly. So if it's gonna happen again, it's probably gonna happen at Silverstone. So yeah, it's I can see why it's sold out, and I think everyone will be watching it. The fact that it's the week after as well, I think helps quite a lot. The fact that it's still fresh in everyone's minds, so and fresh in the drivers' minds as well. I think that's maybe the biggest part too. Like still het up from what happened this weekend. They're not going to have enough time to sort of reflect on it and really decompress and
cool off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves though. I'm curious because you've kept your cards close to you about what you thought of this incident. I've made a few notes of my own, but I am curious what you think about how it all played out. My overviewing thought, which I've already told you, I think both of them kind of at fault at different points throughout basically the whole battling. I think both.
Yeah.
Like you said, it was inevitable that it was going to be a crash. It's probably unfortunate that Max still ended up being able to finish in the points. I think they probably both deserved to not be in the points at that point.
In a way, yes.
But yeah, I think both were at fault for different reasons. But I'm curious how you saw it for sure.
Yeah, well, I'll preface it by saying I also saw some analysis by Davidson on this, and I think his analysis was really, really strong on it too. Also because he didn't just look at the final bit of it, but he kind of looked at all the laps leading up to it and kind of what they were each doing, which I really enjoyed as well.
I've got notes on every move that Norris attempted.
I was going to say, I mean, there was a few different moves. I mean, I'll let you go through the moves because maybe you've got more buffed up notes on that anyway. I mean, it was kind of a bit half and dozen. As I said before, there's so many clips from past years of examples from this, because this is the type of corner where, because you're going from so fast to so slow, but it's such a wide entry, you really can send it down, and you really can force another car kind of off on the side. Whether you are defending to do that, or whether you are passing to do that, you can be kind of either side. It can work out differently. I think very much they were sussing each other out to that point. You know, Norris, of course, kind of sent it one lap, and Max kind of saw it coming, and they kind of went wide a bit. Max is a bit cheeky going wide, but it was hard to say because Norris really did just thunder it down. You thought, well, there's enough to thunder it and just say I had the apex, but then you're giving the other car no choice, because if he turns, you're just going to smatter anyway.
Yep.
I guess it is more this final incident, which is really curious. I suppose there's two bits people are really talking about, and one is like, was it Max's fault? And two, could Lando have avoided it? And the answer to both of them is yes. Max moved over. Now, this move to move over on the car on the outside is a common move. We have seen it a lot. And you move over because you're trying to restrict the other driver to give them less of a good run, because it's way better to brake on the outside. You're going to slop easier, and you could potentially cut under or just get a better run into the next straight, because that next straight's so good, you don't have to make the move just in one corner. So lots of people have done this squeeze, whether they are defending or attacking. Now, Lando doesn't have to move. Once you're on the brakes, you're allowed to stay on your line. That's by the F1 rules. Now, when you squeeze the driver, you're hoping to push them out a bit, and you're hoping that they will move, because you want them to move off onto the curb, off of that nicer line. But Lando didn't want to do that. He's like, I'm not going to move. And he didn't move, and therefore Max moving over touched him. So from that perspective, it was Max movement that ultimately derailed both of them. Lando made a decision not to move, which I think is a big statement in itself. Now, whether he did it just out of, I don't know, frustration, choice, wasn't thinking about it, I don't know, right? There's 100 different ways you could ask him, and he probably wouldn't even remember why he kind of stood his line. He was still on the track edge. It's not like there was a ton of track there. But by the definition, he wasn't left an on-track's width room, and he was squeezed. But it was still a statement that he didn't move. He
Yeah.
didn't want to move out more, which we have seen other cars do, and no one looks back on, when this happened in the past because someone moved and they didn't make contact.
Yeah.
We, of course, only talk about it when there is an incident, right? We talked about this in Canada. There were certain moves we thought were great, but if it was an incident, we'd probably spend half the podcast on them.
True, yeah.
So
I think the biggest thing that, people always seem to bring up with track limits is like, if that was a wall, he would have forced him into the wall.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see why he got the penalty if that's where they're enforcing the track limits are. And if you have to say, well, if the track limits are at other tracks like Monaco, for example, if that's a wall, then Max just pushed Norris into the wall. So you kind of
have to leave a car's width in that case,
Exactly,
regardless if there's wall or not.
Yep,
yes.
yep.
Even if he was moving and there was track space, it's still under braking and it's still kind of frowned upon.
Yeah.
As they were saying in the broadcast, Max is the reason they had to clamp down on moving under braking. Because he's the king of moving under braking and kind of keeping it within the rules.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention on that move as well is, God, what have I got on my notes? I think that the other note that I had on the move is Max, obviously, like you say, they try and force them out wide, obviously on purpose. They try and do that because of the bad run. If you look at where Max even is, like, he hasn't even started turning into the corner yet, and the apex is already way gone. He's not looking to make that corner. His only goal is to literally, he wants all of the track, and he wants to just force Lando off. Like, he'll take the absolute outside line if he has to, and damned be if Lando was there. And I think that's probably even more evidence to say Max needed that penalty, because Max absolutely could have just taken the apex there, and he didn't. So there was obvious intent to,
of course,
to do what
you
he did.
hang him wide and dry.
Yeah.
So he also doesn't want him to do that under Rover as well. He's trying to make it awkward.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it was obvious at this point, like, Lando kind of made a move or two, and then he seemed to fall a bit back. And you thought, oh, like, the sprint, is that it? Has he used his tires? Is he gone? But obviously it wasn't. And then, again, comments from McLaren afterwards, understandably saying, look, Max moved racing a bit too hard for the situation he's in. He's so far ahead. But this is Max, people. Like, he is here to win, regardless of the circumstance. And that was exactly what we saw on show.
Yeah.
And I think this was Lando's first proper taste of that. As Leclerc has experienced in the past, as Hamilton has experienced in the past.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if, it's your one-off race to get a win. Max will still say, he'll treat it as if it's for the title. That's just why he is as good as he is. And that was exactly why he was pulling the move that he was trying to pull.
Yeah. There is the hope, because obviously after 2021 they changed a lot of the regulations because of Max. There's the hope. Obviously he did get the penalty here, which in itself
he did get the penalty.
It is in itself a good sign. Obviously the fact that he took Lando out it's a whole other story. I know people are talking about the fact that
and it's just bad luck. They could have just bumped and nothing happens. It actually was such a small touch, and for both cars to get that amount of damage, that's the uncontrollable bit. It wasn't like it was a absolute smash.
I mean, the other point was, even in 2021 at Silverstone with Hamilton taking Verstappen out, yet he still came through to take the win, even with the penalty. Like, you're always going to have situations like that. You can't just give someone basically a black flag for something like that, a DQ. It's not something that you can really do, but there is a wider discussion, at least, from what I've seen with fans talking about it, about like, how can you enforce it a bit more? But I don't know that you can.
No, because it's how much do you look at the results of the crash versus like does Lando still carry on? He finishes his position ahead of him, then you look the other way. But it's like, how would you know that if it's
then you're not looking at the incident
halfway through
isolated.
Lando,
So and that's they've been guilty of that before. The whole point of the trying to clamp like on these regulations or these rewriting of the rules is trying to make it as black and white as possible. Obviously, there's certain
and consistent, and that's also what Davidson said with some of his analysis, where he said, "Look, they didn't penalize it back then, so there's an argument to say they shouldn't have for certain moves, but this exact move still did fit within the rules. It's not like they made an exception here, So.
But my original point was the fact that this is the first sort of really big battling we've seen with Max since 2021. I am hoping that a lot of the rewritten rules will start to at least penalize Max when he does these things that should have been penalized in 2021, or Max starts to think a little bit more when he starts doing a lot of these because he knows he's going to get penalized. Obviously, this is just kind of the first instance, but, you know, going into the rest of the season, you have to expect that this is going to happen again and again. So
if he's challenged more like this, I mean, that's the point. We're hoping to see there's more challenge for the front. That inevitably means there's going to be more of Max trying to drive like he is, you know, one of the greatest drivers of all time, right? So
yeah, for sure. Going back to, like, because that's pretty much all the notes that I had on, like, his final move, but like you say, the moves leading up to it, was
they're just as interesting in a way.
Yeah. So I've got like 4 moves that Norris made. I think his first one that he, like, tried to make, and he was talking about Max moving in the braking zone. Max definitely moved in the braking zone. He reacted to him. Like, Norris was obviously going for the dive down the inside. And you see, just as Norris moves, Max does move across as well. He probably should have gotten a penalty for that one as well.
If he did that exact thing twice, I think he would have gotten in trouble for it. I think if you do it once,
they might
you
give
can just about get away with it.
I think they might give you a black and white flag or something,
You'll get the eyes on you at least, for sure.
But yeah, that was pretty blatant. The second move that I got is the first time that Norris dives. He says that Max moves under braking again, and I guess maybe a little bit.
He comes across a tiny bit, but it's nowhere near as aggressive.
He gave him a hell of a lot of room on the inside to make that corner, and he absolutely did not make that corner. It's good that he gave the position back, even if he did complain on the radio about it. I think, I'm okay with how that second one played out.
Yep.
The third one is interesting, because Norris dives again, and this time he does make the corner
just
about. He was on the radio saying he was ahead at the apex. I couldn't see any conclusive evidence he was ahead at the apex, and if you look close enough from the, like, heli cam, he did also lock up that inside tire, which means he was not in control of the car by the definition. And that is part
Max was very good to drive around him rather than into him.
Exactly. So the fact that Norris says he has to give the place back, I don't think he does, and I'm glad that Max didn't, and they also didn't give him a penalty for not giving the position back, because I absolutely think, even if the commentators were like, he has to give the position back, they obviously all missed the fact that Norris locked up, and, you know, I had to slow-mo and pause it, granted.
Sure, to try and see.
But it's not conclusive. At absolute best, they were directly beside each other at the apex. At absolute best, but I think Max was just like a hair in front. So I think that third move, while it is also a little controversial, I think Max was right to stay in front. And then obviously the fourth move.
I think that was the move he could have got it done. That's the thing. That third move he almost had. I think it was where he was actually quite far off Max. Like, he actually had more room to come outside a bit, to widen the corner a bit. Yeah. But he took it deadly sharp, assuming Max would come over. And I think Max just went, well, I can actually just take the full outside here. I could tell that you're all the way in there. I don't need to crown you here. And it kind of worked out perfectly for him. So
maybe you're right. Maybe he just was like thinking, because he didn't want to go all the way to the outside, all the way to the inside. He's like, if Max does this moving under braking again, he's going to go straight into the back of him. He had so much speed with the DRS coming into that corner.
Yes,
that if Max,
and he was
does
full
try,
on the marbles and very tight, and it was
So
he could have just pulled it off, but it was extremely difficult. And as we saw, he just mucked it up. But at that point, he did live to fight another day. Well, for pretty amazing how these were like visually the most dramatic moves that he made, and yet the ones they made contact was almost the most simple. Like, no one was locking up, no one was diving, no one was dashing around. They kind of just clumsily met, together. It's funny how these things work out.
But I mean, that's all the notes I had for that. I think both were a little bit naughty. I think the way they handed out I actually have no issues with how they handed out penalties.
No.
The other thing I did want to mention is the fact that Max defending on that fourth move, Norris they'd already told Max he'd been shown a black and white flag. Norris did go off the track on that second move across track limits trying to dive. So he's like, that they actually, if you listen to his team radio, they're like, okay, so that should be a penalty, right? Which means he should have gotten 5 seconds, which he did by the end of the race. He did get 5 seconds. And Max should have known that. So even if Norris got past, if Max kept within 5 seconds, he would have inherited the win.
He could have fought less and just stayed with him.
Yeah. And I think the emotions just kind of got to both of them. Like if Max did kind of think a little bit smarter there, he probably could have just let it happen. The DRS was so strong anyway. He would have been able to keep with him. They were so evenly matched on pace that I don't think it would have mattered, but maybe he just in his mind he just didn't even want to risk it. What if there's the chance he can streak?
That's not the way Max would want to win anyway. That's like with all due, I don't mean this with any disrespect. That's the way that Lewis would win. More cool, calculated. Bigger picture, more like a Prost win rather than a Senna win or a Max win. They'd more just go, no, I'm still going to win on the track. So
that's fair. That's fair. I guess you can't really understand what's going through his brain. That's for Max and Max alone to understand.
He's not as successful in his young years without racing a certain way.
True.
So, that's a bad thing. So but it was Titanic, and I was wondering because I normally don't check too much social media at all because of course I don't want to get spoiled, but sometimes I'll see a message or two from people either saying like, hey, make sure you watch it because it was really good, and I heard a lot of people saying that was brazy, and I was about halfway through going, look, this is fun, but I don't know about brazy. I'm like, when's the brazy? Like, okay, I guess, but
I was like midnight, so because the race started at, was it like 11 our time?
11, it was 11
midnight's
PM.
around the time it all started to kick off, and that's when
it was just before you're probably thinking,
I was just about to go to bed.
Anywhere?
I was like, I hadn't even started the race yet because I'd only just caught up on F3, F2, and qualifying.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, whatever. Max, was half a second ahead of P2 in the qualifying, and I was like, I can leave the race till tomorrow morning. This is going to probably be pretty stinky. And then I saw, literally, as I'm about to go to bed, I see all these comments saying, "Oh my god, what is happening?" And I'm like,
"Oh, you actually saw the comments."
Comments.
When you went...
Yeah, I didn't spoil anything, but obviously it was one of those where something.
Well, it's probably good you did see them then at that point. Yeah.
Because I would not have had a chance in the morning to watch it, and I would have been spoiled throughout the day before going home. So I did watch it.
Yes.
I lost a lot of sleep because of it. But
good on you.
But yeah, I'm glad I didn't get spoiled because it was a very much a big what the fuck moment the last half of that race. But I mean, those are all the thoughts I had on the incident. I'm curious if there's anyone listening or watching what your thoughts are on. I'm curious to see if there's any other opinions, but I just think they're both battling probably a little bit too hard. Emotions getting the best of them, and
I don't know about too hard. Like I don't know about that. Like it was just the slightest touch really that ended it. And as I say, the move that Max did again, this has been done so many times before at that corner. And yes, Max has done it other places. Heck, you could go back a race to when Norris squeezed Max onto the grass. And what if Max didn't move there? You'd say the same thing would have happened. Like, this is a common thing that happens. And that's probably one of the least precarious places you can do it because there is flat curb and runoff there. And again, as you've probably seen clips, it happens all the time. You don't blink the other way. It was just hard racing, which is really what we're here for, So not necessarily to say, oh, we don't want to see that again. That was so bad. It was, you go, no, show us more of that. It is just a shame that it just had to end like that. It was just like, really? Like, yeah. So, but they both at least have to go back and they would look at it and go, both of them, I think, especially Lando, of course, would go, I could have done, many different things there and handled that very differently.
Yeah.
So
I think Lando, there was in the post chat, he's like, if Max does not admit to any sort of wrongdoing, then he's going to lose a lot of respect for him. And I'm like, oh boy,
it's a pretty big statement.
Oh boy,
even with emotions after the race.
Yeah. Yeah, you see the photo of from behind them where they're both doing the paddock talks and they're directly next to each other speaking to different reporters. I'm like, oh, that's gotta suck.
I did see Lando like walk up to the motorhome and he takes his bag off and just like throws it and leaves it at the front, like he's a kid coming home from school in a bad mood. And everyone's like, okay, we get that he's pissed, but why is he throwing his bag outside and leaving it there? It was like, that's like, what the fuck is that?
Mum, come pick me up.
I know. It was like, what the hell is he doing? He's like leaving his bag out the front, and Ted's just talking about random crap, and the camera's just staring at his bag on the floor. It's so good. That is weird.
That is weird. Actually, the team radio that Norris had as well, like when it's very
trundling back to the
trundling back. He's like blah blah. We should just retire if we're not going to get points. Blah blah. Just retire, and it's like it's pretty defeatist at that point. I know, obviously. He was challenging for the win.
He probably doesn't know the car is absolutely destroyed as well. Exactly. But even before that, he can tell.
Yeah, he just thought,
he doesn't want to keep going.
Yeah. But the fact is, it's like, Max did come home and take P5. If it was just a puncture, and he did end up, that was the other thing, is Max obviously blatantly trying to block him getting past after they were both coming down to T4, and Max sort of swerving to try and not get him past.
Yeah, like, that did look a bit
that was
sus.
Pretty shit.
Whether he was even paying attention, I didn't look into that.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, the first move, when he came across, there was a fast Alpine, I think, behind that was coming through, so you could attribute it to that. But then he decides, when coming into the corner, just to sort of run Norris out.
Yeah, actually,
he goes deep through it. Yeah, as well. So that one, I was like, okay, Max has done that deliberately. That should have been looked at a lot more heavily as well, because that's
I
really
guess neither
bad.
of them raised it, but it was
all
in the chaos of the moment.
Yeah, but
there was an argument on the actual move that Max was more looking to the inside and expecting Norris, but I think he had more than enough time to tell where Norris was. It's not like he's braking and he doesn't see him, so then he goes, oh, he's gone. It's like, no, he's obviously on the other side.
Wow, so that was a really good lap for me. I can't even see him in the mirror
anymore. Like, he spun off somewhere, clearly. He couldn't just be on the other side of my car where I left racing room.
No.
He's too clever for that, so I don't think that's... he's obviously looking to check that Norris isn't going to go down the inside, but he probably then realizes he's on the outside anyway. It's not rocket science.
Yes, so. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, what that all means is Russell somehow wins out of nowhere. It was actually, like, even though, that was where all the action and all the talking point was the Max Norris thing. The end of the race was still exciting because there was Russell in the lead and a very, very fast Piastri in P3 who looked very, very strong coming through to the win. He ended up getting past Sainz not too long after. And was starting to close on Russell, and whether he just sort of ran out of time or ran out of tyres.
Or Russell just turned the wick up because he knew that he might have been in trouble.
Yeah, and that we know that Mercedes on the low fuel runs and the final runs generally is pretty quick. So it could have just been that Russell, put the foot down a bit. I was expecting, and I said this in one of the other chats, with like other chats with mates, that I'm surprised that Russell didn't just bin it out of nowhere, because that seems to be what he does whenever he's in a good position.
For his race weekend, I mean, I wasn't looking at him too closely, but I know when I was listening to the race in particular, they were saying following Russell, they think this was like his strongest race weekend potentially ever. Like in the sprint, he was a little behind Hamilton, but I think that was more Hamilton actually being on really good form. And apparently throughout the race, he probably maximized everything he could for the car.
Yeah.
And in a way, that's why it turned out it turns out that's why he ended up getting the win. I mean, it took out two contenders, but we've seen four teams that are deadly close up the top there. It's not like it's just Mercedes to pick up the pieces now from two Red Bulls or whatever. And he wasn't even like super far behind them. I mean, that's why he passed them when they were still trundling around. So credit to Mercedes. I think when we were talking about, okay, is this their grand return? Let's see. Again, we're now talking about a top four. Heck, or even talking about a top three with Ferrari falling behind. Oh, how things can change in such a short amount of time.
That's...
But also for Russell, for a driver who is now who has to basically take over the team. We had some doubts after Canada. this was, apparently like a far stronger weekend than Canada. It was even going to be, of course, P3 anyway, which was going to be a far stronger P3 than his Canadian P3. And he ended up getting really rewarded for it. So good on him. He deserved it.
Yeah.
And as I say, people out there saying, actually, if you just go back and watch him, he was kind of on it the whole race and doing amazing things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that Mercedes, again, continues to get better, and Russell continues to actually get his crap together.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Keep this up, guys. This is tasty.
I think in the race, I remember there was a moment, particularly at the start of the race, Hamilton was quicker, and I think he did get past on George, and George got straight back past him. I think
there was a lot of teammate fighting of teammates trying to buy out, but he did. They had a bit of a back and forth.
Yeah. So the fact that he managed to get back past and then was never really challenged by him again, because I think Hamilton sort of dropped back to...
And he had a bit of everlasting damage from the start, so that would have hurt him over time as well.
Yeah, so... yeah, I mean, Russell is... Yes, it was a good weekend for him, but it's still one of those things when he's under pressure, I still need to see more from him when he's under pressure. Like... Yes, he was in the lead, and there was pressure with Piastri behind, but it wasn't visible pressure. It wasn't like he's
he
right
wasn't
on
like
his
an active
gearbox.
battle or a fight
exactly,
or something to defend him off. He just had strong pace, and that meant that he was ahead enough of everyone else, which you need to do. It doesn't show us what we saw in Singapore and Canada, where he's having that back and forth battle.
My
that's
point
where he
exactly.
Kind of makes those errors.
Yeah. So yes, great weekend for him. And if his weekend was as strong as you say, like I said, he was pretty under the radar for me, because I was sort of looking at kind of everyone else around him. It feels like, but then all the more power to him. But I need to see more from him under pressure. Like if he actually gets to the point where he is now fighting with maybe Red Bulls and McLarens and Ferraris up front, maybe less so Ferraris. We'll talk about that a little bit, but I need to see more under pressure. Because that's, I think, his biggest weakness at the moment is those moments. So, but yeah, I think pretty deserved win. Piastri very, very unlucky to get P2, particularly after what happened in qualifying.
Yes.
Yeah, that one is... Yeah, I mean, he said it as well, where like they've brought all the gravel traps for the outside of those corners. Obviously, Austria last year, we saw... 1,200 bloody track limits.
Yes, good to see. We should say good to see they actually decided to try something out of the box to deal with it.
100%. Yeah, and for the most part, it did work. We didn't see a huge amount of track limits. We still saw some, but nothing,
nowhere near as much. Yeah, half the grid has penalties.
Exactly. And yeah, the Piastri one was freaking marginal. And
unlucky.
Yeah, very, very unlucky. I don't even think he barely touched the gravel.
He basically was
in
it, essentially.
Yeah. But yeah,
but not in it enough to slow him down.
Exactly. And from that he started P7, so he managed to get up to P2 again with the top two dropping out, which
he had that touch early on as well, so that could have affected things too. Yeah,
true. But he was millimeters away from a race win. Like when you think about it, if you look in retrospect, it's that small margin of that qualifying, he would have been quicker than P7. You would think
that close.
So had he started P3, hell, even P4, would he have taken the race win? Probably
been the one that was actually there.
Yeah. So, but I mean, still good signs from Piastri after what was a pretty weak weekend, I think, in comparison. Must have been Spain. I'm trying to remember if we talked about it, but I think his Spanish Grand Prix was pretty weak compared to
it was still
Norris.
Fine, but it wasn't to the speed that Lando was going overall for the weekend.
Exactly, yeah. So and then this weekend he was, Norris obviously kicked it up a kind of another gear, I think, knowing that he could go for the race win, and I think that just sort of pushes a driver a bit more, knowing you can.
He did beat him in the sprint, though. There was some credit there. He was very cheeky to overtake his teammate there. Good to show that he wasn't afraid to give him one.
Yep.
And he probably should get about 5 moves of the day, because the amount of times he went around the outside, what was it, T5? Yep. Every time you thought going out the outside, is like, he's not going to have the grip. And then he just does. Yep. It's like, how the hell is he doing that? Yep. That was, every time you cut to him, you went, beautiful.
Really good. The one on Checo, I think it was very primo. That one was very good. So he's not short of confidence, that's for sure. So
no, very confident out there.
And his pace, particularly, this was a pretty high tire wear track, just in terms of, because it's really high loading on the corners, but and his pace at the end was strong, and even through the middle is quite strong. So, and that he has struggled with that compared to Norris. So I'm hoping that he is, again, just starting to close in on that, and maybe he can start challenging for wins himself too. So but
he's not far from it.
Yeah, as we say, Silverstone is a strong track for McLaren, and Mercedes as well, to be fair. But yes,
not Piastri's home race though. Don't get it twisted.
True. Yeah. No, we'll know whose home race it is, because they'll say it 1,500 times on the broadcast. They'll say it's the best racetrack, and I can't wait for the fucking Sky Sports
broadcast.
Not bad.
It's not bad to go around for 6 hours as well by yourself, but that's another thing.
Oh yeah, that's right. Is that what you did? You did at Silverstone, was it?
Obviously, yeah. I'll be seeing nightmares going, no more.
Anyway.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know what. There's a few other little things we can talk about.
There's a few little things, yeah. I mean, we said Ferrari. Yes. I mean, they are struggling with general setup and things going wrong. I mean, Leclerc just getting unlucky and into things again.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Yeah.
Either whether it's his car, like doing weird things in the pits, or whether it's running into incidents and going down the back, or whether it's just not having race pace. Because it's just interesting how these things can change. It was them and McLaren, we were talking not long ago, being head to toe.
Yep.
And it's like
it was not even that long ago. Not even that long ago that Ferrari were the ones where McLaren was, where it's like they're the closest challengers for wins, and maybe not quite as close, but they were the ones that were there, and it wasn't McLaren.
And even in comparison to Merc, which feel like they've just swapped places with them. How long ago were we saying the otherwise? I mean, it shows. It does seem to be. We talked so much about how Ferrari were really trying to focus on their upgrade schedule, and they wanted to keep things open. So when they started to really go down a certain path, they were confident in it. And it seems like this first real step to go down this path has introduced some grievances. Particularly, it's brought back everyone's favorites, porpoising, which really hurt the car here. They've already said that they've expedited some upgrades to Silverstone to already try and fix it, because they've recognized it's that bad. They've already brought something forward to say, we need to try and get on top of this. Otherwise, we're stuffed, right?
Silverstone, they're porpoising is gonna be bad there if they're experiencing.
So that's why I think they've gone, hold on, we need to touch base on this.
A lot of high speed, a lot of downforce. That floor's gonna be riding the ground. All
and
race.
We've seen we talked about earlier this year how upgrades are getting the right is going to be so important, and how many cars have we already seen this effect? I mean, we could talk about a few others. We look at the Haas. Look how good they're going now that they've got their upgrades right.
Yeah.
You look at the RB, the complete inverse. Yuki, I think, ran no new parts on his car, and he found he was going about the same pace as Ricciardo with the new parts. That's not a good sign. Look at the Aston Martin, even more back the other way, going the other side.
Yeah.
Look
at Alpine.
Get it right.
Remember Alpine at the start of the year?
That's the other one, Alpine. And now they're consistently fighting for the top 10 with the Haas.
Yeah.
You go, since when was it Alpine and the Haas fighting for P6, P7 and dicing it up with Checo?
Yep.
And now they just are quite comfortably.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. Dicing it up with Checo.
It's not wrong. It's true.
God, that's somewhat depressing.
But we preluded it, saying you've got to get it right, and that's even why Ferrari this whole year was saying we're focusing to make sure we can get it right. And already they're starting to stumble. And immediately it's so close that McLaren then is finishing on top of them. Merc is finishing on top of them. And if they make even a slight mistake, it's just the rest of the field's all over them because they're not that far behind.
Yeah. This is textbook Ferrari, right? It's about the time in the year where Ferrari starts to drop off. Like, you look at... And
it was already after Spain where the drivers were already getting in each other's throats. And Sainz was going, all right, I'm starting to get a bit shit up with this. Do I just leave already? So... Come on, boys, get it together.
Please. Like, we don't... The whole...
You just won Monaco. What are you doing?
Yeah, it was, a couple of races ago. Like,
it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. I do hope they can... You know, when a four-way fight is so much... Like, that'd be so good in terms of teams. Four-way fight and teams. You know, because...
They're still close to it, but they're at risk of just...
You said the same about Mercedes. Like, like Mercedes, they're sort of... Like, they're the fourth best team, but they're sort of close to it, so they could get to it. And this is the same thing we're talking about Ferrari, except Ferrari are going the other way. Like...
I know.
It's so worrying.
It's crazy.
But, yeah, they need a strong Silverstone. Otherwise, I think
it's going to be telling next week. And
definitely.
Very telling.
So, you mentioned Checo. I have to throw. I can't stop talking about how shit Checo is, man. He qualified P7 and P8 respectively for the sprint and the feature. We talk about top four teams, right? He was P8 in the main qualifying, and he was P7 in the sprint. And the only reason he was not P8 is because Leclerc did not get across the line in time for his final lap because of that debacle. Otherwise, he would have been, guess what? P8, the back of those eight drivers. He is consistently the slowest of those four teams. What the fuck? Like, what the fuck is he doing?
And yet again, there's another race where he goes, we struggled because we got damage. And it's like my brother in Christ. You're starting in the midfield.
Yep.
If you don't start in the midfield, you have less chance to be in the carnage.
Yep.
Just don't start in the midfield and you won't have damage.
Yeah.
You can't, like, sure, it happens and you get damage and it's like, it hurt our pace. You shouldn't have been there anyway. I don't know how many times we've said this.
Yeah.
Like, just stop being there, please.
Yeah. He finished 2 places behind Max and are still a long way off Max in the race, despite Max getting that puncture and having to trundle literally the entire lap back to the pit and also get the 10-second penalty. He's still finished.
And I haven't seen it, but apparently he had a massive battle with Hulk. I think on the last lap, Hulk went off the track or something, and then he had to like re-overtake him. All I heard was that Hulk apparently had to fight him tooth and nail, and he did end up getting past him.
Right.
So...
Wow, he got past the Haas. That's fucking crazy, bro. Yeah. Definitely deserving of
the other way. Well, he did get past Hulk, and then Hulk took it back off him.
I see. Okay. I thought you were saying he was fighting tooth and nail to get past
he got him on the last lap or
yeah.
something, and then Hulk managed to sneak it back by him. So...
Yeah, it's not. He shouldn't be fucking fighting a Haas. Come on, man.
No.
They've got to be looking at all their, like, Red Bull are looking at the clauses in the contract saying there's got to be a way we can get out of this. We've got Lawson here. Seriously, we need fucking someone else.
Yeah, good thing they didn't sign it yet for next year.
Oh my god, it's doing my head in, man.
It's questions.
I just want to see one weekend where he performs even.
I know it's not like It's not like we're his biggest haters or anything. We're
you used to have. You had the.
I know.
Sorry, Mexican flag.
Like, Mexican flag.
You took that to the Australian Grand Prix.
I had it at the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, German flag, I guess, because why else wouldn't I support him?
Yeah.
I'm going to start buying the Audi merch because clearly that team actually looks like it's going to be really fun to follow. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, come on, Checo, pick up your shit. Seriously.
Yeah, Checo, pick up your shit. Haas, keep doing well. Yeah. This weekend, wow. Since when are they good strategy in pit stops?
Yeah, that's true.
Beautiful strategy. They kind of committed to like, no, we're not going to go for a one or anything early. At first, it looked a bit fishy, and sometimes you see teams committing early and then up just getting stuck in a train. But they actually pit early, which meant their drivers got in some fresh air, and they were able to keep undercutting by quite a margin, that both their drivers basically had a ton to the guys behind. And as soon as everyone caught up to them, stop again, get the fresh tyre.
Yeah.
And by the end of it, even though they were battling Checo, they were a good distance ahead of everyone else, even on the hard tyre, which was tricky. So did both drivers. I mean, they had a bit of a fight after they first stopped, and you went a little bit, is this really what you need to be doing? But they were sensible about it. Hulk ended up getting ahead and they sorted it out.
Mm.
We saw it, I think, with the Alpines. We saw it with the Ferraris. We saw it with the Mercedes. Like, everyone was doing it a little bit.
Yeah.
But wow, like, again, 2 top drivers crash and there's points there. God, they cashed in. That's big for them.
That's the thing. Like, I mean, they were both in the points anyway because they got P6, P8.
Yes.
So they
would have been double points anyway.
Anyway, and they would have been because Ricardo. I'm looking at so many names here. Verstappen still finished P5, so they would have been P7, P9. Which even then, for a Haas team, you would have looked at and been like, "Damn, they had a freaking good race."
Yes.
But like P6, P8 is huge for them. That's a huge.
What is it, like
haul of points.
13 points or something, and then they had 8?
Yeah.
Like, geez,
Yeah.
that's
Big weekend.
when that midfield's as close as it is, and Alpine's there, and for RB, they're probably like, oh god, have we already lost our best chance to get points?
Yeah, particularly with how RB started and like where their upgrades were sort of looking to go, and
yes,
yeah, they
going.
excited about Haas. You know, you train them well.
We're all excited about Haas in this household.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're talking about RB. Ricardo does get a P9. Yeah, it's fine, I guess. I don't.
It's hard to know if he should have been better than that. Also, you're still going.
Yeah.
Really, like still fine, but when he's trying to absolutely smash it to keep his seat, I guess this is just about enough.
Yeah.
But
he was.
Still don't think enough at all.
He was better
things.
than Yuki, but as you say, I think you said Ricardo had the new part, or did Yuki have the new parts and they weren't?
I think Yuki took them off, and their pace was very similar.
That's
to
right.
How
Yeah.
things panned out.
Yeah.
Yes.
So who knows if it was due to the parts, whether or not the actual. I don't
it's
know,
still
whatever.
points, which is credit to him.
Yeah.
And I guess he then was ahead of one of the Alpines, I believe. Which
Yeah.
is credit where it's due because they were strong.
Well, it was ahead of both of them because Gasly got P10 and I think Ocon got P11 or something.
Who got P8?
P8 was the
6, 7, 8. I had it wrong in my head. It was.
Yeah.
So he was ahead of both of them
Yeah.
actually. So more credit than he should be due maybe for that.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see. I mean, we'll have to see both for that team to sort out what they're doing, and of course for the driver ultimately. So
yeah. I mean, the only other team I'm not going to talk about Sauber. I think everyone knows what they're doing and where they are and where they'll probably stay for the rest of the year. In speaking of Sauber, though, we're going to talk about Aston and particularly Alonso. Alonso's weekend was pretty dreadful. Capped off.
What's happened?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened to him. He capped off with his blatant crash into Guan Yu Zhou during the race. I don't know if you saw that one, the one where
I don't remember it. To be honest.
You see an Aston crash into Zhou out of nowhere into turn 3, and you're like, it must have been Stroll, and then it's Alonso, and you're like, why did Alonso do that? That's a real amateur mistake there. Like,
I feel like I recall it happening. I just can't picture it.
Yeah, it was just like him locking up, trying to go down the inside, and he just goes into the side of him. He's way too deep and just crashes straight into him. He gets a big shunt from Alonso. But like even in qualifying, or at least in the sprint qualifying, I think Stroll out-qualified him there. I think in the main qualifying, Stroll still went out Q1, but it's not like Alonso was a million miles ahead even in Q2.
No.
So I don't know what's happening with Aston and particularly with Alonso. Alonso's obviously signed his new 2-year deal, I want to say.
Earlier in the year, yeah.
Yeah.
And Stroll is now back again for more.
So they're going to be together for... I don't really know what he sees in that team or whether he just doesn't really seem that motivated lately. I don't know.
Well, yeah, it's again a very recent thing, even for the most part of the year so far. Even if that team wasn't as strong as they were last year, he was still, almost qualifying in top 3 at times and actually having, fights and racing his absolute heart out. And even if the car has dropped a bit, it feels like that you still don't see any of that kind of fighting or mentality or spirit or anything. It's I don't know if the car's changed dramatically, if it's him, if it's It's also just because he's still at the back, so it's like no one's really, investigating it too hard. I don't know. There's too much else going on. But he's very quickly fallen from being, always in the top 10, qualifying a pig of a car, to not being talked about at all, which says, enough as it is. So
yeah, true. Honestly, that's all the notes I had. I don't know if you had anything else.
No, I think we'll call it there. I think it was a good discussion.
Yeah. We're not going to. We're at like 50 minutes now. We're not going to talk about it. I did have some notes on Formula 2. Formula 2 this weekend was good. Definitely
we could do a bit of F2 recap after Great Britain when we've got a bit more time.
I think there's some stories definitely happening. But I just want to say straight off the bat, I'm so impressed with Paul Aron. He's still leading the championship across both these weekends. He's not been faultless by any stretch, but he's always there, man. He is every single race. He's always there. Every qualifying, every race. He's good on race starts. He's good on defending. He's good on attacking. He's generally pretty good on tire wear. He's good at recovering when he does make errors. He is just such a complete driver, man. And the fact that he's not going to get a drive in Formula 1 is fucking criminal.
He's still a unpartnered driver.
He was with Mercedes until they dropped him when he came into F2. Or their partnership finished, as I was reading, which meant he got dropped, even though he had a good F3 season.
It's a proper, he had a good F3 season, but I guess Mercedes, really wants to see, of course, who they think is the creme de la creme. But yes, it is kind of ironic that when you look at Mercedes backed drivers, or who were backed by Mercedes and how they're doing, that, bigger conversation, I think, maybe on how F2 is viewed and everything like that now. But irrespective of him as in a vacuum, I think we called it up earlier that he's actually putting the consistent job in.
Yep.
And he's continuing that. But again, I think...
And all my homies hate Isaac Hadjar because... Fucking God, I can't stand Hadjar. Oh my God,
he's a character. You either love him or you hate him.
I fucking hate him so much. I hate him. But yeah, we'll chat a bit more after Great Britain. I think that's a good idea.
Sounds good.
Regardless, let us know all your thoughts. Anyone listening, watching, on any of the races, any of the drives this weekend, on the Max Lando incident in particular. I'm very curious to see if there's any other opinions out there that maybe we haven't seen. But we're going again. 3 weekends in a row. We're going back to Great Britain. I can see it all happening again. So stay tuned. Definitely
T1, baby.
Oh God, no, please. I can't handle anymore. Just I want good racing, but I need some calm just for a minute. Just get us to the season break, and then we can have some carnage after then. But stay tuned. We'll have our preview for the Great Britain Silverstone Grand Prix out very shortly. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and take care. Bye bye.